movie nerds, and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about Three Body Problem, the new Netflix adaptation of the book by the same name. Now, for anyone who is not familiar with the Three Body Problem, like I mentioned, this is a book series, the first book of which is titled The Three Body Problem by an author named Liu Zixin, and I apologize immensely if I have absolutely butchered that. I have no doubt that I did. I think that these books are really great. I'm not super keen on this particular adaptation, but we'll go into kind of various reasons why that is. First, let's talk about what the Three Body Problem is. So a overall sort of encompassing way of saying it without giving too much away is that there is a group of scientists who, through various means, discover that there is an alien civilization from light years away that is traveling to Earth, having been summoned by someone in the past to come to Earth and essentially take over. And so the alien civilization is sort of using these scientists as a way to kind of clear their path, so to speak, to come to Earth unchallenged, basically. So I think whether or not you enjoy this adaptation of Three Body Problem is going to really come down to whether or not you've read the books, for one. I think if you've read the books and you're looking for an adaptation that is very true to the books, then you may or may not, I'm leaning towards not, enjoy the Netflix version of it. If you've read the books and you just want an adaptation and you're not terribly picky about what that adaptation really looks like, as long as the general themes and storyline are there, I think that you will enjoy the Three Body Problem. And if you are someone who has not read any of the books, then I think if you're looking for a middle of the road sci-fi television show to enjoy, I think this one could be for you. I have some issues with a few of the choices, I guess, the casting choices that they have made. Now, if anyone is not familiar, Three Body Problem is a show that is being brought to us by the same showrunners that did Game of Thrones. And I know that they had a ton of flack for ruining basically everything that George R.R. Martin didn't join them on. I think that he was with them sort of side by side, helping them out up until season 4. And then from 5 basically through to 8, they were on their own or like didn't ask him for help, didn't invite him back. And then there was this whole kerfuffle about them wanting to go off and do a Star Wars show that eventually got canceled. And that was why they rushed the last season of Game of Thrones and essentially kind of ruined it for a lot of people that were seeing it out and had watched it the whole way through. So this is the same set of dudes coming back to do Three Body Problem. And I honestly kind of wonder if perhaps the showrunners in particular just don't really know how to adapt a book into a television series or how to do that in a way that doesn't kind of ruin what that book is. And really, for me, I think the choices that they made in casting, and I'll kind of elaborate a little bit, they split some of the characters in the book into multiple different characters, but I didn't think that they did it for any particular reason that was necessary. John Bradley, who some of you may remember as Samwell Tarly in Game of Thrones, he is playing a made-up character in this show called Jack Rooney. He is not a character that is in the books, and I don't think he really lends anything to the overall story. He just kind of is comedic relief, which in the course of the show, I don't necessarily think that we need. I was also sort of surprised, I guess. I mean, I wasn't necessarily surprised by it. Maybe that's the wrong word because I did see the trailers and stuff, but I was a little bit more surprised that they hadn't set it in its original location. Like the book itself obviously takes place in China. There is a past, a present, and then like a future world, which I don't think we see in the show too much, but it does happen in the books. And in this show, version of this. It is more westernized. So we do have that aspect that is happening in Mongolian China in the past, in like the 1960s. And I think we have a few scenes that are happening in the 1980s. But the rest of the time, really the majority of the time, it's modern day. And it's happening, I think, in London I think in London, if I'm not mistaken. And really, like, the scientists just don't feel very scientific, if that makes any sense. Like, they're supposed to be some of the brightest and smartest scientists in the world, hence why the aliens are trying to, like, control them and use them as a way to sort of halt technology, if you will. And yet, all of these scientists are really just not that smart. Like, the way that they talk and the way that they act in the show, for me, is just kind of a letdown in terms of how they were written. And then a few of the casting choices, I feel like they were just not particularly good at acting, just in general. And that sort of took it down for me a little bit. I don't know if I would consider this like a really great sci-fi series. For me personally, I would put this one probably under Foundation and probably even under The Expanse, which I never even finished all the way through. Like, I didn't necessarily enjoy The Expanse a ton, and I enjoyed Three Body Problem less than that. And I don't know if maybe that's because I am familiar with the books, and so I was expecting maybe a better adaptation of the story. I don't think it's terrible, but I don't necessarily think that it captures, I don't know, the magic. I don't even think that's the right word, but the really, like, kind of some of the underlying themes of what's being presented in the book, I think, are missing in the television series. And it does, for me at least, tend to drag in a lot of areas. Like, I think I was pretty okay with maybe the first 3 episodes, and then past episode 3, I just wasn't necessarily connected to any of the characters, and it just sort of went a little bit downhill for me and just wasn't necessarily as exciting as I was expecting it to be, or didn't hold my attention as much as I was expecting it to. So if this does get a second season, I don't know that I would even remember to look for it or be that interested in watching it, which sort of sucks because I feel like the second book is a lot more exciting and has a lot more stuff going on in it that would lend to a really cool thing to see, you know, in the form of a television show. But I don't know that Three Body Problem really hooked me enough to even want to wait and see what they would do to a second season, or if they would even do it well. They've jumped around a little bit in season 1 as far as like timeline is concerned. I think it still works okay. Like, I don't think that they've ruined anything or thrown things off to where it won't make sense, you know, similar to how they did like the Wheel of Time, where they jumped kind of all over the place and sort of ruined what was going on and ruined which characters were supposed to be doing what and when. I don't think that this does that. I think it still, you know, is okay as far as timeline is concerned, but I just don't think it had the same, I don't know, connecting factor. I wasn't necessarily attached to any of the characters particularly, except maybe Rosalind Chow. I really enjoy her, and I liked her character in the show, both past and current. So I don't know. Well, I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see if this even gets a second season, but it wasn't necessarily a loss, but it wasn't necessarily a win for me, if that makes sense. So those are my thoughts on the Three Body Problem. I would love to know what you guys thought if you have watched this one. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.